Hey everyone, welcome back to today's episode of Prime News. A little bit later today than I wanted, actually quite a bit later than I wanted. I had a prior engagement today, but whatever. You might as well take advantage of two giveaways we have going on right now. One of them is for the Nintendo Switch Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Edition bundle. If you go down to the gleam.io link down in the description to enter, it's a free giveaway, and when we hit 50,000 subscribers, we will announce the winner. We also have another giveaway where we're giving away 5 Switch games, 1 Switch game to 5 different winners. It can be up to $60 in value, no limited editions, physical or digital only. I will put a link to the podcast episode that we announced that giveaway on, since it is our 100th episode of the podcast giveaway, Nintendo Prime Podcast, to be exact. That being said, let's get into the news. So we obviously have to start with the biggest news of the day, and that was the Nindie showcase. And oh my gosh, was that Nindie showcase amazing. It might be better than some Nintendo Directs. I know, hot take, personal opinion, but let's just go over some of the biggest games from it, although every game felt pretty big. So the show kicked off with Cuphead, which, that was a Microsoft exclusive game, and it's coming to Switch. In fact, it's coming to Switch and will have Xbox Live support with achievements in the future. And not only is it coming to Switch, it will be running at 1080p in docked mode, 720p in handheld mode, and at 60 FPS, essentially running exactly the same as it does on the Xbox One and PC. That is pretty stunning to see that kind of action happening. Cuphead is an amazing game. I can't state that enough. It does arrive on April 18th, so rather soon. And that was like the whole show kicked off with that. And then there were other surprises in there as well. We got Stranger Things 3, the game. That's coming on July 4th, the same day as Stranger Things Season 3. Now, there have been 2 prior episodes of this, obviously for Season 1 and Season 2 of the show, and it's been on mobile devices, but hey, look, it looks fantastic. It's really good on mobile phones, so it's probably going to be really good on Switch. No reason to really doubt the quality of that one. There were some other ones I want to point out as well here. Red Lantern. This is a brand new studio. This is the very first game they've ever made, and it's about this person who's seemingly going through a point in their life where they feel worthless, and they want to kind of venture off and find some value in life. And they decide they kind of want to compete in this competition of strength and durability, where you get a sled, get some dogs, and you kind of go on this race. And it's not really about who gets first. It's about actually completing the race. And very somber music. It looks incredible to me. So that's what I wanted to point out. We do have another game coming from Double Fine. You guys might know that studio. They produce some pretty amazing games called Rad. It looks pretty crazy to me. Looks really, really interesting. It probably is a day one pickup for me. That's coming out sometime this summer. If you remember Red Lantern, by the way, that just comes out sometime this year. There was no other announced date other than that. And we have to talk about this one because, to me, this was almost as shocking as Cuphead, if not more shocking, because there's almost zero precedence for this. So we got Candace of Hyrule, which is a Crypt of Necrodancer crossing over with The Legend of Zelda, and it seems to be like a sequel to the Crypt of Necrodancer, which was a fantastic game in that of itself. But yeah, Link is playable, Zelda's playable, takes place in Hyrule. Pretty crazy. For those who have never played this game before, the original Crypt of Necrodancer, essentially it's like a rhythm battle game. So you're fighting to the rhythm of the music inside the game. There's apparently going to be like over 25 or so remixed Legend of Zelda songs. They featured a ton of enemies. I mean, they had like, sprite level Lionels going on. There was just a lot going on in this. Bokoblins and man, it's crazy. I remember my live reaction at first. I'm like, what is going on? Because this world looks like A Link to the Past. And yeah, it's supposed to. The world is apparently generated randomly. So, if you're like a canon Zelda person out there, you're not going to find like any world set up here that's going to be canon. But it sounds really, really crazy. And the reason that this is so crazy is not just because this is a new Zelda kind of game. It's because Nintendo trusted an indie developer with The Legend of Zelda, and that is unprecedented. Most major first-party studios do not allow IP at the level and the respect that the Legend of Zelda series has to be even touched, even dreamed to be touched by an indie developer. But Nintendo allowed it to happen, and oh boy, does it look amazing. This is like the next big spin-off for Zelda. We had Hyrule Warriors last time, now we have this. I don't know what's going to be next. I think everything's off limits now. I mean, are we going to start seeing like a journey game for Mario? I mean, who could say no at this point? And there was a lot of other games as well. I'll put a link down to my live stream reaction to this where you can get all the games, obviously, because the Nindie Direct is in that stream. And, I mean, there was a Shadow drop as well, Blaster Master 02 drop. There's new content and stuff in that. That dropped today, I think, for like $9 or $10. So you can check that out in the eShop right now. All these games will be available on the eShop. And I actually heard that Cuphead itself will potentially be available physically. There's some retailer listings out there, pre-orders going on, so I wouldn't be too surprised if Cuphead is physical and Candace of Hyrule is physical, especially since Nintendo obviously has some involvement with that one, so pretty crazy stuff. Oh, and hey, look, Xbox Live is coming to Switch. I think we've just known this for a while, but it's nice to have it confirmed. The MPD report is in for the month of February, and there's not a lot to take away from it other than the fact that Nintendo Switch remains in the #1 spot. It was #1 in January, so there's a chance it might actually sweep the entire year because PlayStation 4 and Xbox One have actually seen a massive reduction year over year, January. And February, they seem to be kind of tailing off as they get ready to announce their new systems, their new platforms, whatever's next for those companies. So Nintendo's on the upswing, they're on the downswing. Don't be surprised if Switch ends up winning the MPD every single month. It also was the highest MPD month for Nintendo since 2011 in terms of the month of February. And that's interesting because they moved 900,000 units of DS and Nintendo Switch back then. Now, this doesn't mean Switch moved more than 900,000 units in February, but what it does mean is that in terms of total value, in terms of money, Nintendo made more money in the month of February for unit sales. So that's pretty crazy. Remember, the Switch was 300, the Wii and DS were not 300. Hey, that's pretty cool stuff. There obviously was some games in the top-selling software as well in the top 15. Breath of the Wild was in there. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Super Smash Bros., and New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe were the games representing Nintendo. So none of them were really in the top 5, but just below that in the top 15 is where those all resided. So again, we don't get numbers from the MPD anymore, so we're kind of left guessing. So all I know is that they won, and for people that care about that, hey, Nintendo won February. PlayStation 4 2. Xbox 3. So during GDC, Epic Games announced that their Epic Store on PC is getting a bunch of new exclusive games. They announced like 15 of them, but we're just going to talk briefly about 3 of them, and that's because the PlayStation 4 exclusives from Quantic Dreams are all coming over exclusively on the PC side to the Epic Games Store, including Heavy Rain, Detroit Become Human, and Beyond Two Souls. Now, that's not the only announcements they had come out during this little brief time period. They also announced that they will be having these games and more from the Epic Games Store available on the Humble website. Now, previously, the Humble website has been primarily for Steam games, and it's a way to bundle a bunch of games together and get them cheaper than you would normally buying them individually. So you buy a Humble bundle pack, and then you end up with a whole bunch of different games. Now you just won't know what client those games are for, but whatever, they're part of it, and in interest of fairness, they absolutely probably should be part of it, in spite of the recent drama surrounding the type of data they might be collecting and using off of your computer with that client, something we talked about in a prior Prime News episode. If you want more information on that, I'll actually put a link down in the description. That being said, Tim Sweeney, CEO of Epic, had something very interesting to say about their store. He essentially came out and said, we're not going to have crappy games on their store, which is basically a not-so-veiled shot at Steam, which Steam has a massive issue, not just with shovelware games, but just in terms of the quality of the games there, not just from the early access programs and all that stuff where you can like access games and pay for games before they're done, but just in general, Steam has a quality control issue, and he's basically trying to tell everyone, hey, look, we're not going to have that same quality control issue. Of course, in response to that, fans that don't really like Epic, but they prefer Steam, we're quick to point out that there are some games already on the Epic Store that aren't exactly high quality, including like a Roller Coaster Tycoon game, which upsets me because I actually like Roller Coaster Tycoon, but a lot of their offerings lately haven't been that good. I think he's not referencing so much stuff like that, however. I think that's just fans nitpicking. But the battle is going to be raging on, and Epic is obviously coming hard after Steam just in terms of nailing down these exclusives and trying to nail down, they already provide a better cut of revenue to developers to encourage them to want to come use their platform. And now, they're going to be available through Humble. They're trying to eliminate the shovelware to make it, more enticing to consumers. If they would just clean up their application itself and add some of the basic functionalities of Steam, clean up some of the bugs, and make it stop crawling your computer, I think then I might be willing to give it a shot. But until then, I'll stick to Fortnite on my Switch and leave it at that. So Xbox head Phil Spencer sent out an email to employees in wake of the unveiling of Google Stadia, which is the live streaming service we talked about yesterday. And the interesting thing is he didn't really look at it as something that hurts Microsoft. Instead, he looked at it as validation of what they've been working towards with xCloud over 2 years. Because obviously there's going to be some similar feature sets between video game streaming services, and xCloud is their streaming service that they are planning to talk about and potentially release later this year, or at least start a beta for it later this year. All of that being considered, Phil Spencer in that email not only noted that this is actually validation for the direction they are going in, they also noted that this was Google's time to come hard and that Microsoft is going to come extremely hard at E3. Now remember, Phil Spencer has confirmed several times that Microsoft is planning to release a hardware standalone console box that's not intended for streaming, for you to play games locally in your house on your TV, no internet connection required. So he's already assured consumers that that's going to be the case, and they're going to also be offering this game streaming service, plus they already have Game Pass, plus they already have a back catalog of games they can call upon. So it's going to be interesting to see how Microsoft brings it hard at E3, but clearly xCloud is going to be a big feature for them at E3 to directly compete with Google Stadia, meanwhile keeping current consumers happy with a brand new system. I assume they're going to do a two-pronged approach at E3, and Microsoft is going to be dominating a lot of discussions at E3, even over Nintendo Switch and whatever Nintendo brings to the table. Even if Nintendo has a revised Nintendo Switch Pro, a new console generation announcement combined with their xCloud stuff is going to be very interesting. And remember, Microsoft bought all these studios recently. Don't be surprised to see some new game announcements for the launch of xCloud and maybe for the launch of the new system that probably isn't going to come till next year anyways. And that's it for today's episode of Prime News. I know not a ton of stories because all of the stories today everywhere on the internet were basically just about the Nindie showcase. And that's fine. Everyone kind of let Nintendo have their moment in the sun today while the Game Developers Conference was going on. And there's all these meetings with different companies behind the scenes. So, yeah, that's just a thing that happens at things like GDC. I want to thank all of you guys for tuning in. Remind you to enter those giveaways I mentioned at the very beginning of this episode. Be sure to subscribe if you enjoyed this video and you want to get more of it. Again, we will be back at our regular scheduled time tomorrow at 5 p.m. Thank you for tuning in. I love your faces, and I'll catch you in the next video.